Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. I want to thank each and every one of you for your attention and your concern throughout this process. We've been together for many days now, and I know you've been paying good attention to every witness and all the testimony that you've heard. I think we can all agree that it's tragic circumstances that have brought us together. But as Ms. Feralia told you at the outset of her opening statement, it is a privilege to present this case to you on behalf of the state of Ohio. And before you get to deliberate on this matter, I will provide my opening closing argument. Then you'll hear from Mr. Mack and Mr. Johnson, and then you'll hear once again from Ms. Feralia, because the state of Ohio bears the burden, and you'll hear from the state last before you deliberate. Ladies and gentlemen, we are all together today because of the choices Bionca Ellis made on June 3rd of 2024. That day was like any other day in the life of Margot Wood. And I think we can all relate to what she did that day. Take your kid to the grocery store. It's something that is fun. It's a little get out of the house, buy candy, flowers with your child. And yet, that ordinary act turned into an unfathomable nightmare because of what this defendant chose to do on that day. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk us through the indictment, the charges that we have charged Bionca Ellis with, and then we're going to shift our conversation to the affirmative defense that she has raised. All right? So I want to start with count 1, which is aggravated murder. That Bionca did purposely and with prior calculation and design cause the death of Julian Wood. And under Ohio law, the key terms here are prior calculation and design. All right? Those are the words you want to pay attention to when you're deliberating on count 1. What does prior calculation and design mean? Well, you'll have those instructions with you when you deliberate. And in part it says, it's the process of reasoning that must have included a mental plan involving studied consideration of the method and the means, or the instrument with which to cause the death of another. The amount of time that the defendant spends in planning isn't really as critical, but she needs sufficient time and opportunity for the planning of the homicide. So did Bionca Ellis give thought or preparation to choosing the murder weapon in this case? Yeah, she absolutely did. And we can all see it in State's Exhibit 192. And you'll have this, 193. 182, Your Honor, I apologize. Sure. Ladies and gentlemen, you will have these videos back with you when you deliberate. I'm going to let this play for just a second, and then we're going to be quiet. I'm going to be quiet for about 50 seconds while we watch Bionca Ellis choose her weapon. $50 seconds. We watched that defendant go directly to the houseware aisles in Volunteers of America, go through that bin, look at the knives, inspect them, handle them, look up top of the knife block up there. She spends almost a minute looking through these knives. She doesn't pick the first one she sees. She finds the two favorites of hers, and then she walks out of the store. She made a decision. That was careful. We spent a lot of time on cross-examination with Dr. Knopfsinger today about how Bionca Ellis didn't just stab anyone in the Volunteers of America store. No, and that supports our argument. This was calculated. She walked out of that store and went to the store next door, encounters more people on her path. And then when she gets to Giant Eagle, that's when she chooses her victim. But she knew when she chose those knives what she was going to do. She was going to harm someone. She was going to take somebody's life. Now, murder is count 2 and 3, and they're charged under different sections. So count 2 is that Bionca Ellis did purposely cause the death of Julian Wood, and count 3 is that she caused his death as a proximate result of an underlying felony. And what we mean by that is that he died because she committed or attempted to commit felonious assault and or endangering children. And with these charges, there are degrees of culpability and mental states. Okay, so when we're talking about purposely, and again, you'll have all this in your instructions, but these are the definitions of purposely and knowingly. And we're talking about this defendant knowing that her actions would bring about a certain result. Okay, so we know that when she selects that butcher knife and she ultimately stabs 2 people with it, that she's going to bring about a result, right? She's going to hurt them. She's going to kill one of them. And you think about it, with a butcher knife, if you stab somebody, that's going to be the result. You harm or kill. Okay, so when you deliberate these counts, ladies and gentlemen, you can consult your instructions. I'm not going to go through these ad nauseum, okay? I know that you are a smart, attentive jury, but I do want you to pay close attention to count 1 and talk a lot about that prior calculation and design and the plan that Bionca Ellis had that day. And of course, she had no relationship to these people, and that's okay for proving prior calculation and design. You want to focus on the time and the consideration that she spent choosing her weapon and the steps she took after that. Now, we're going to go through the timeline. We have the benefit of really having all of these actions captured on video. So we know that in a couple days prior to June 3rd, Bionca Ellis had a run-in with the North Olmsted Police Department. And that's important because it's part of the anger that fuels her on June 3rd. You heard testimony about how she was in their jail for a night and that she was purported to have all sorts of property and money and gift cards and other items. So when she's walking around on June 3rd, we know that that's on her mind. She says as much herself. But let's walk through this timeline that we have. right? And again, you're going to have these videos, you'll have the compilation video that we went through together. But what I put together today is a kind of a streamlined timeline, all right? So we can see kind of minute by minute where she is. So at 2:36, you see her in that yellow circle. She's in her wheelchair. She's on the North Olmsted Police Department property. A couple minutes later, here she comes into the lobby, and you meet Danielle Shook, one of the first witnesses you heard in this trial. And if you remember how their encounter went, Bionca Ellis wasn't so happy when she left the lobby. Remember, she turned the lights off as she departed the lobby. And then she kind of skips down the stairs. She ditches her wheelchair and her suitcase. And you can look at the video. Again, of course, you heard testimony that she walked with purpose and that she was angry. You can watch that video again that we watched here this afternoon. The careful selection of the weapons, minute by minute here. 14:55, so 2:55, less than 20 minutes after she went to the police station, she's got her weapon. 14:56, she's going to enter the Things outlet. She walks in, looks around. Pay attention. She's got 2 knives still behind her back, and she's looking around. Ladies and gentlemen, she's looking for a victim. These people, they're adults. There's men in the store. Those aren't suitable victims for Bionca Ellis. She's got to find the most helpless victim she can to carry out her crime. She exits. What does she do then? Well, she's got 2 knives. She can't use 2 knives. So she's got to ditch one. She's got to keep the best one. What does she do? She taps her knives against the brick column, ditches the flimsy one, keeps the superior knife to carry out her act. Look at her walk. She's not going into that store for anything but to wreak havoc on somebody that she hasn't chosen yet. And unfortunately, or fortunately, how you want to frame it, again, it's all on video what she does that day. 2:57, there she is, knife in hand. Again, this is 22 minutes have passed since she went to North Olmsted for her money. And here it is. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the decision she makes after she's selected her weapon. These are the people she wants to harm. It's been decided. This is a volitional choice, ladies and gentlemen. This woman is not experiencing, and we'll get there, but this is a woman who has made decision after decision and planned this out. And finally, at 3 o'clock, we know what happens. Now, part of my job here is to make sure that you understand the elements. I'm not going to dwell on this at all, but we know that a child died. To prove that there was a death in this case, we had to show some autopsy photos. All right, I'm not even going to enlarge them on the screen here. You can see these 2 photographs. We know that we have a deceased victim. We also know that Margot Wood was stabbed and that she was injured, okay, for the attempted murder charges and the felonious assault. She has scarring on her body, and she will always have that scarring. So the state has met its burden as to those counts as well. this case is unique, of course, as we all know, that the burden shifts, right? The state has proved beyond a reasonable doubt all these elements of all the charges against this defendant. Now, there's another step, and you all know it, and you don't have to overthink it. I know it is complex, but at the same time, you want to take it step by step and not overthink what we have to do. So what does it mean that she raised this defense? Well, you know that she has to prove something to you. Has she done that? And how can we tell? Again, I'm not going to read all this stuff. I usually don't put much writing on these slides, but because there is so much to get through, I want you to be prepared for what you'll have to read and talk about in your deliberations. The testimony from Dr. Knopfsinger is pretty fresh in all our minds because he finished his testimony today. The fact that this defendant has schizophrenia does not excuse her for her conduct. So now we are talking about kind of the battle of the experts. Let's talk about Sarah West. All right, you heard from her last week. Her opinions are based almost solely off of this defendant's self-reports. I don't know about you, but I got the sense from her testimony that she either hadn't watched the videos or really did not remember them and did not factor into her analysis of this defendant. You'll have her report to go through. When she was asked about basic things about these videos, she did not seem familiar with them whatsoever. And you've heard from Dr. Knopfsinger how crucial these videos are. This timeline, the methods that this defendant goes through to make her decisions, Dr. West seems to not put much weight in that at all. So that's what I mean by she does not use corroborative evidence from June 3rd. But she agrees with us that June 3rd is the day we're going to focus on. We're not really talking about too much that happened before. We're going to talk a little bit about afterwards, but really June 3rd is what we are really focusing on. Something that struck me about her testimony was that Dr. West said, I see a lot of psychosis here. And I didn't really know what she meant by that because, again, she didn't use corroborative evidence. Not one witness in this trial testified that Bionca Ellis was talking to herself or muttering things, talking to anybody. So Dr. West's suggestion that she was hearing voices didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And we talked a lot about anger and rage, and that is really the crux of Dr. Knopfsinger's report. And we know that Bionca Ellis was not medicated on June 3rd, but we believe she was very angry, and that motivated her to commit these crimes. But Sarah West doesn't talk about anger. She kind of agrees with us eventually that anger could cause someone to commit a crime. But again, she is not focusing on anything but old medical records and the defendant's responses. Do you remember Dr. West talking about disorganization? That was a big theme of her report and her presentation. And she didn't really define it. And she also said things like, I believe, and maybe so, and probably. Ladies and gentlemen, the preponderance of the evidence is a different burden than the state has to prove when we are proving the elements against this defendant. Think of the tipping of the scales. Okay? It doesn't have to be much of a tip. If you don't believe Sarah West, the defendant has not met her burden in this case. And I submit to you that she has not met that burden. Her theme doesn't make a whole lot of sense. She kept saying that this defendant was disorganized. And I did not find that to be helpful because she didn't really explain it, but Dr. Knopfsinger does. What does he say in his 36-page report where he overturns every video, every record, every interview, and he analyzes it through his expert lens? And again, you can see his report, you can read every word. he talks about what disorganization means. It is word salad. It is gibberish. It's nonsensical. His examples that illustrated this were someone that is loitering or trespassing, doesn't understand what they're really doing. They're kind of aimless. Bionca Ellis isn't aimless. She's angry. She's not disorganized. She's committing a specific willful act. She is not a disorganized person. And Knopfsinger really delves into that for us. So here we are. There's 2 prongs, as you know. I know you paid good attention in this case. And it's a second prong that we are really focusing on. There is no question this defendant is schizophrenic. That's prong 1. Bionca Ellis suffers from a severe mental disease, a schizophrenia. However, the fact that she has that diagnosis does not mean that she didn't know what she did was wrong on June 3rd. Pay attention to her interview with Dr. Knopfsinger. Okay? She's not being paranoid. I thought some of the best testimony that made sense to me was about, she's not talking about, there's aliens or there's ghosts or whatever there is that I'm protecting these people from. There's no delusion. There's no grandiose explanation for what she did. She doesn't think that these people are harming her. Those were examples Knopfsinger used to explain why someone might act the way she did if they truly were insane at the time of that act. We have none of that here. None of that. She is fueled by anger. She is dehydrated. These are her words. You'll watch the video. She's dehydrated. She's hungry. She hasn't slept. It became a perfect storm. Keep in mind, Dr. Knopfsinger has testified for the defense and the state. He's 30 plus years of being a psychiatrist. He has seen a lot of different things come across his desk. He has no interest in the outcome of this case beyond the work that he did, the report he made. He's telling us what is based on his experience, his training, his knowledge. This is not an NGRI defendant, and here's why. Today, he told us that in order to be successful on this affirmative defense, she's got to prove that what she thought, what she did, was right. And she has not explained that in any way. There is no rational motive. The rational motive that she provides is what we need to focus on. Hungry, dehydrated, missing money. It all comes together. And when she's angry and she sees those people, the relationship, the close relationship in time, that's what we have. That's why we're here. So, ladies and gentlemen, you'll have all the evidence. You can go through all of it. And I know there's a lot. There's body cam and there's interviews. Watch her interview the next day. I want you to do that because she's still very angry the next morning. And I remember we played the interview in court, how loud it got towards the end. You could hardly hear her in the beginning. And then later on, she's shouting, "Stupid people, liars, thieves." And again, the way she acts directly after this. Dr. Knopfsinger pointed it out, and I think the other witnesses explained it as well. She is not saying, "No, don't arrest me. I didn't do anything." She doesn't run away. But she does walk away calmly. She doesn't stay on scene at the car. She succumbs to the officer commands. She never protests her arrest. And Knopfsinger tells us that these are behavioral factors that indicate that she knew she did something wrong. The actions of stabbing. What a personal, gruesome thing to do. And I think on cross-examination, Mr. Johnson talked about, well, wouldn't 30 stab wounds be more indicative of rage? No, ladies and gentlemen, stabbing anybody with anything is an act that would be fueled by anger. To have a 10-inch knife with a 7-inch blade and to select the most helpless victim possible and then stab that victim twice, that is rage. That's what we have in this case. All right, so here we are at the very end, kind of to recap our timeline. She's upset. She goes directly to the knife houseware aisle in Volunteers of America, and she carries out her crime. Ladies and gentlemen, I urge you to go through all of the evidence together. I know that within your collective memories, 12 of you, some of you may have taken lots of notes, some may have not taken many notes at all. And that's all right. Listen to one another. Talk to one another. Go through every video, the reports by the doctors, and discuss. Think but don't overthink. Bionca Ellis is responsible for the death of Julian Wood. And Mr. Mack told you that, if you remember, in his opening statement a week ago. But she did it with prior calculation and design. She knew what she was doing that June afternoon. Hold her accountable for what she did to that child and his mother. She knew what she did was wrong. Find her guilty. Thank you.